Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to Cool Stuff, etc. My name is Riley, and I guess I should also extend a Happy New Year to everybody as I'm filming this at about 9:45 in the morning on January 1st, 2023. So, Happy New Year, I guess. I intended for this video to come out before the end of the year, but I guess the first day of the new year will suffice. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about. I had the idea, a lot of people do top 10 movies of the year or whatever, but I haven't seen 10 movies that came out in 2022, I don't think. So I probably couldn't do a top 10 list. However, I can do a 5-star movies that I watched in 2022 list. And I thought, why not do that? It seems like a fun idea. And additionally, I considered just presenting it in the order that I watched them. But then I had the other idea to use this program, or not program, website, program, whatever you call it, algorithm, called Pub Meeple. And it's intended to be used for board games. A lot of board game reviewers and stuff use it. But you are able to plug in whatever you want, and then it has you like go head to head, like this or that. And then after you answer so many questions, you get a list, a numerized list of in order of your quote unquote favorite to your least favorite, or whatever, what have you. I'll try and remember to leave that in the description, so you can use it if you want to. But yeah, so we're talking about 5-star movies, and I also wanted to talk about honorable mentions and dishonorable mentions. So I would say the honorable mentions are movies, a selection of the movies that I rated 4.5 stars over the year. And then dishonorable mentions, I believe, are anywhere from half a star to 1.5 or 2 stars. And with these movies, I'm just going to mention them and briefly have a synopsis of what they are and why you might like them, possibly, or I might even just say it if I feel like you know what it is. So you specifically, if you know what it is, I know all of you. So yeah, why don't we start with the honorable mentions, then we'll get into the dishonorable mentions, and then we'll get into the 5-star movies. Okay, sounds like a good plan to me. Honorable mentions, first off, Martyrs, the French New Extremity horror film. This is a movie I had been meaning to watch for a long time. It was on Shudder, and I woke up at like 3 a.m. to watch it. Not purposefully, just that's what happened. And it was great. It lived up to the hype for sure. I think it could potentially be a 5-star film for me. I just need to give it another watch to process everything that happens in that movie. Perfect Blue, the Satoshi Kon, I think this is his first movie, if I'm not mistaken. An anime thriller mystery about losing your sense of reality, your sense of self, when partially about being a star in the public figure, or public figure, I should say, in the public eye, and also partially, I think, about being a woman, also in the public eye. So, very, very well animated, very creepy and disconcerting. The next movie on the honorable mentions is Der Samurai, or just The Samurai. This is a German horror film that deals with gender and how people are made to, keep that in the closet, so to speak. And it's very, very unique. It was a huge shock that I loved it as much as I did. And I think this is another movie that could definitely be 5 stars if I watched it again. I thought it was phenomenal. Crimes of the Future, the newest Cronenberg film. I did see this in theaters, and this is a 2022 release. It was one of my first Cronenbergs, and I was honestly floored in the theater with it. I thought the ideas presented were very cool. It is a slower movie, which maybe is what's holding it back from being 5 stars, but I still thought it was phenomenal. SLC Punk. This is one of those, I don't know if it's late 90s or early 2000s, or maybe it's mid 90s. It's one of those movies where they, zero in on the punk scene, and it's just got a cast of characters. It's very it's very kind of funny, but also has very dark moments. And the way it's presented, like the structure of the story, is interesting, as most of it really is just like a series of vignettes with the characters and introducing new characters and talking about the scene, and they're exploring, coming of age and in the world and what that means. And it's a very good film. Matthew Lillard's in it, and he's great. Uh, Next up, Female Prisoner number 701, Scorpion. This is an exploitation film from Japan, starring Meiko Kaji, who people may also know from the Lady Snowblood series. It's one of the first, to my understanding, it's one of the first of those women in prison subgenre films, and it is like a revenge film. It's quite violent, heavily stylized, lots of like trippy sequences with interesting lighting and whatnot. I just really enjoyed it. I think the trappings of being a low budget film are kind of what's holding it back. There's just certain things that bothered me, like how no one in the movie can throw a punch that looks real. They whiff like it's a huge miss. Like the camera's not angled well. It just looks really bad. But for the most part, this is a phenomenal film, and I am excited to watch the later entries in the series. Next up, Barbarian. This is a very popular film from this year. It's a horror film that's commenting somewhat on the horror genre a little bit, and also on gentrification, Airbnb, of course. I don't want to say too much if you haven't seen it. I don't want to spoil it because it's a very interesting story. Well acted, well directed, and there wasn't a movie that came out this year that was quite like it. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my setup here. May. This is a psychological horror following the May, who's played by Angela Bettis, who I don't know her from much else, but she has a very familiar face. But she's phenomenal in this movie. She really gives it her all. It's about a woman who is, often alone, feeling isolated, and is also just kind of generally a weird person, socially awkward. And it just kind of follows her exploits with this guy that she has a crush on, and it obviously escalates to a point, and it's a very, very cool film. I highly recommend it. I want to see this director's other, I shouldn't say well-known film, but their other film that people know, kind of. I guess their other noteworthy film. That's the way to put it. It's called The Woman, and it's based off of a Jack Ketchum novel, I believe. So I'm interested in that as well. And then the final honorable mention before we get into our dishonorable mentions is A Fistful of Dollars. This is one of the first, I would say, Western films that I actually sat all the way through, and it was phenomenal. I thought it was great. The way it was shot was it was very Italian, which is a good thing. Clint Eastwood is great. His character is very, very cool, very emblematic of that sort of Western archetype of the hero. And I just think, I don't know, the reason I rated it so highly is just that it seems like there's a lot to think about. It's a movie that I think about from time to time, and I think another viewing of the sequels would be eye-opening to maybe like what this movie kind of means, because it really does seem like there's a deeper meaning in some way. All right, let's move on to the dishonorable mentions. I only have 4 to discuss because I don't watch movies that I think are going to suck very often. But I did watch a few that suck. Not suck, but they're not great. First off is Old, the Shyamalan film about the beach that makes you old. I thought it was very stupid. The acting was very grating and bad. It had an interesting premise. I mean, it's very weird, but it had an interesting premise. There were moments that were shocking, violent moments. And then this could have just been a middle of the road, kind of okay film, but I hated the twist at the end. I thought it was so dumb. It just seemed like a twist for twist's sake. It didn't, I don't know, it didn't resolve the story or anything about the characters. It just seemed like they threw it in there to be shocking, and I don't know, I just did not vibe with it at all. So next up, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. This is a, one of those CGI fests, which aren't bad inherently, but 2.5 hours of CGI monsters fighting. And well, I shouldn't even say that because it's not 2.5 hours of monsters fighting. It is like 30 minutes of monsters fighting, and then the rest of the 2 hours is like this domestic drama, this family drama that I just could not give a shit about, even though I like Vera Farmiga as an actress. But yeah, just I couldn't sit through it. I think I fell asleep, and that probably colored my review, but even still, I just, it was not good. Jurassic World Dominion, the newest Jurassic World film. I did see this in theaters, and it was an auditory hellscape. This movie was so fucking loud. I thought I was gonna have a migraine after it was over, and I probably did have a headache at some to some degree. Yeah, this movie it had so many promising things about it, like the return of the original cast. And I honestly, the bug thing was interesting to me. I thought that was fun, but just the length was ridiculous, unnecessary. The action scenes were formulaic, not super well shot. Relied very heavily on CGI dinosaurs that the actors, couldn't really see, so they were just doing their best, and it just doesn't. I don't know. It wasn't very well choreographed, I would say. The biggest problem is the plot or the lack of plot, because this is just jumping from one action scene to the next to the next to the next. And like I said, it would be there's movies that I like that are like that, but this movie has no sense of danger. There's so many instances where the actors, or the characters I should say, are like have near death experiences that, like, once the 20th near death experience happens, it definitely cheapens. It's by that point very cheapened, and the sense of danger that any of these characters could be killed off or hurt or have any actual effect on the plot is just like out the window essentially. And that's another thing, is that the return of the original cast really bloats the group in this movie. By the end of the movie, it was actually really funny. There's like 10 people trying to climb up this ladder while the dinosaur's chasing them, and it was just like a fucking clown car, like and it was hilarious. And yeah, so this movie's not good. I did enjoy the previous movies to some degree, but this movie was just not for me at all. And then the final dishonorable mention, and probably maybe the worst, just because of how much this franchise means to me. Hellboy, the 2019 Neil Blomkamp version. I have talked about this on the channel. It is a mess in a lot of ways, in most ways. Terrible effects. The story, I don't know why they chose to adapt The Wild Hunt. That's like the middle of the Hellboy series. It doesn't make sense to start there. The acting was serviceable. I think that I don't remember his name, the guy from Stranger Things, he's fine as Hellboy. Everyone else is just kind of whatever. And I think that what the biggest issue for me was that they didn't capture the character of Hellboy. Like, they made him this like wisecracker, like Spider-Man, but if you read the graphic novels, he is not. He's very dry. He has a sense of humor for sure, but he's not like making puns about shit, and I don't know. And then also the violence, just like the graphic violence didn't really fit the tone. The movie was really struggling to find a tone between funny and exciting and violent and adult and dark. They were trying to go like a Deadpool route for sure. But it just doesn't work with Hellboy because he's not violent like that. Like, I don't know, it didn't have any of the things I enjoy about the Hellboy series, and so that's why it's probably at the bottom of my list in terms of the dishonorable mentions. Although I think objectively speaking, it's better than a lot of the other dishonorable mentions that I talked about, but yeah, all right, let's get into the top five, not five, the top, I'm gonna say the top 5-star films, the 5-star films of 2022. There are 23 of them. I should mention that I watched 175 movies last year, which is actually insane to me. I'm interested to see if I can top that this year, and I will try my best. I think my goal is probably going to be around 200 this year, so we'll see. And so there's 23. I have a lot of them here to show. I think for the 23 to 11, I'll just briefly talk about them, because a lot of these are well-known films. And then from 10 to 1, maybe I'll talk a little bit more at length. So starting off the list, we have Seven, David Fincher's Seven, crime thriller about, killer, the seven sins, and yeah, just a great movie. I think that the script is excellent. The themes are so so well integrated, about decay of modern society, so on and so forth. I think it's a very nihilistic film. I don't think it ends in a very positive light, which is fine. Not all movies have to, which maybe is what's holding it back from being a movie that I would want to watch more, or again anytime soon. So that's Seven. Next up, we have The Exorcist, the original Exorcist film that I watched this for the first time in my Halloween movie marathon. And yeah, it's excellent. It's a classic. Can't go wrong. The effects are great. The acting is surprisingly great, and the story itself is super cool. Nothing negative to say, I would say, about this movie. Just great. I think everyone needs to watch it, even if you're not a horror fan. Next up, technically two films, Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. So this is Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1's definitely better. Volume 2 is still great. These are homages to, classic kung fu movies, but with the Tarantino twist. And yeah, these are one of my favorites. These are one of my favorites. These are some of my favorites of his films. They're up there for sure. Under the Silver Lake. Ooh, good one. Directed by, what's his name? David Robert Mitchell. Also directed It Follows, and I believe he has another movie coming out soon. This is about a guy in Silver Lake, California, I believe, I would assume, who is like kind of uncovering this conspiracy that's happening, but you're kind of questioning like if what's happening is really happening anyway. I think what elevates this movie to 5 stars for me is that there's so much to take in, and the story is just so tight, and the details are so cool. On a rewatch, you just like notice more and more stuff, and I think it just is a movie that I was thinking about a lot, and so I think that this is a phenomenal movie. 5 stars. Under the Silver Lake, highly recommend that one. Good Will Hunting, classic drama film. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are great writers, apparently. I didn't think about that before watching this movie, but they did write this movie, and it is great. Gus Van Sant is a great director, perfect for this project. And of course, Robin Williams. You can't talk about this movie without talking about Robin Williams' performance. One of the movies this year that I cried at, for sure. I don't cry at movies super often. It's not that I'm trying to hold in tears. It's just, I think it takes a great movie to make me cry. So yeah, definitely cried at that one. The Lobster, excellent, very dry comedy, I would say, film from Yorgos Lanthimos. This is a weird one. I think it's not for everybody, but I greatly enjoyed it. The plot is that society has moved to a point where if you are not in a relationship, you're sent to these hotels, and you have I think it's a month to 45 days to find a partner, a true connection with someone, or they turn you into an animal and they release you into the wild. It's so stupid. I love it so much. The directing is great, as it always is with Yorgos Lanthimos. I can't recommend it enough. This is a great movie. I should mention, this movie reminded me, I need to mention that this is not an objective list. This is very subjective. So I'm going to show movies that I've already shown are in my mind, objectively, technically better than movies that are to come on the list in some ways. But it's more about my enjoyment, what I take out of the film, and my appreciation for the filmmaking. So with that being said, these next 2 films, please take with a grain of salt some way, or the next 3 films, I should say, because I'm going to show Stalker by Andrei Tarkovsky, which is a beautiful, slow film, kind of a sci-fi, and it's about kind of a post-apocalyptic-ish future where there is this zone, and within this zone, there is a room that will grant the wishes of those who can arrive there. And it is the job of the stalkers to guide people there, and escape the confines of this dictatorial, totalitarian city. Um, but it's not an action movie. There is maybe one or two action scenes, or not action scenes, but scenes with some action in them. It's an art house film. It's very slow. It's beautifully shot. The colors are excellent. The framing and the way the camera moves is honestly what, for me, is the most important thing about this movie and what makes this a 5-star film. So yeah, technically speaking, this is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. Technically being like, not like, well, technically, I mean like in a technical sense. Yeah, Stalker. I think everybody needs to watch this movie if you are interested at all in cinema. So, following Stalker, we have The Little Shop of Horrors. So this is what I mean, is that I don't think Little Shop of Horrors is a better film in a technical sense, but would I choose to watch Little Shop of Horrors over Stalker? Yeah, probably. This movie is great. The songs are excellent. It has a very campy feel, very purposeful, obviously, but it just fits so good. And I mean, the music is a huge part of why I love this movie, for sure. But I mean, the actors are great, and the practical effects on Audrey 2 are like literally astounding. The way they did it, from my understanding, is they shot it at a slower or at a lower frame rate, and so the actors were acting, they were moving at half speed, and then they would play it at full speed in the movie, which is just like a genius, but also the effect, it just looks so good. I can't believe how good it looks. I think this is a great movie. Next up, we have Tremors. I would say classic to me. Monster movie, probably not a classic film in a lot of senses. But man, I think that it just has such a great script. I think that like the way that the payoff of so many little details is great. And the actors are, oh my God, phenomenal. I think that Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward have so much chemistry. I thought they would end up together at the end of the film, and I'm a little bummed they didn't. But I think everybody in this movie is phenomenal. And of course, I have to talk about, because I am an appreciator of practical effects, the graboids look so great. And I mean, it still stands up today, excluding one shot, but I will excuse it. But yeah, just a phenomenal film. Comedy horror. I would say that it kind of veers more on the comedy side of things, but the horror. I mean, there is a genuinely scary scene. I think it's partially just like me watching this as a kid and being scared and kind of reliving that experience when I rewatch it. But there's some good moments here that might shock you. So yeah, Tremors. All right, number 13, Let the Right One In. This is a Swedish film, I believe, about a young boy who is bullied at school and just kind of like, his parents are divorced and stuff, and he meets this young girl who he finds to be a vampire, thousands of years old. And I think what sticks out to me is the subversion of expectations. You see this young vampire girl, and she's very meek, but we learn over the course of the film that it's actually very manipulative, and so like it totally flip-flops. And I just think that that's kind of genius. Honestly, it's a very genius story. I really want to read the novel that this is based on. And other than that, I think that's really well shot. I think all the snow is very, very pretty to look at, and it contrasts really well with the red of the blood. And then, of course, you got to talk about the ending. The ending I won't spoil, but the ending is probably one of the most shocking things you might see in a horror film. So yeah, definitely check it out. Following that, we have From Dusk Till Dawn. Now, the only other Robert Rodriguez films I am familiar with are the Spy Kids movies. However, this collaboration with Tarantino on the screenplay, I mean, it honestly, it was the biggest shock of the year. I watched this. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. The first half is very much Tarantino. The characters are very verbose, and they're talking about lots of things, and it's setting the scene and sort of things. It's about two brothers who are escaping prison, and they hijack this family on their vacation, and end up at a strip club that is populated by vampires. It's a vampire den. And so the last half of the film is kind of like a special effects blowout. But there's just so much funny stuff, so many good gags. It's just excellent. Yeah. Nothing else to say. I just think it's great. I'm interested to see the sequels. There's 2 more movies, and I think it's a series, actually. I know they're not going to be anywhere near as good as this, but that's fine. I just want to watch them and see how they are. Following that, we have Day of the Dead. This is the Scream Factory version. And Day of the Dead, it was another shock to me of how much I enjoyed it. Certainly not as much as From Dusk Till Dawn, but I think it is a better film in the sense that it's, I don't know, it's just more serious. This is more of a funny, not funny, but like more of a campy type of movie. Whereas this is, I think it's campy, but it's played seriously in my mind. And there's just so many, oh my God, I hate when there's these stupid little plastic things. Sorry. I love the story, or I should say the setting is very, very cool. And it's just, it's very claustrophobic. They're all cramped in this bunker. And there's a lot of tension. Things kind of build. It's one of those movies that builds, and just explodes in certain moments. And the finale, of course, is amazing. I mean, props to the effects department. They did a phenomenal job. There's so many memorable zombies, so many memorable kills, so many memorable moments and lines and characters. You know, Dr. Frankenstein, you have Bub, you have Joe Pilato. I don't remember his character's name, but he's like the douchebag army guy. It's just great. I think it's phenomenal. I think I showed this at the Halloween party, and I think that I didn't ask anybody, but my feeling about it was that people didn't appreciate it as much as I did, which is fine. They don't have to. But I was really hoping for this one to go over a little bit better than it did. I was bummed about that, but like I can't, you can't force people to like things. That's okay. I still think it's phenomenal. Definitely deserving of 5 stars to me. All right, that was number 11. We are in our top 10. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 of these I have, and 2 of these I do not have, apparently. So yeah, we'll start out with Crash. This is another Cronenberg film. I mentioned him on the honorable mentions. This is the Criterion version, and this movie is so bizarre. It is so unique, and I think on that merit alone, it deserves 5 stars. But it's also well acted. It's very subdued. It's, there's moments of release, I should say, but it's mostly a very subdued kind of character study, kind of exploration of human sexuality and existence. I was trying to think of the word existence, existentialism. But it's about a group of people who are horny when they get in car crashes. And if that doesn't sell you on this alone, I think you suck. You're stupid. Watch this movie. It's so fucking good. Okay, following that, we have number 9, The Thing. It's a classic. I don't need to talk about this fucking movie. John Carpenter is amazing. I watched this twice this year. One time before the Halloween party and one time at the Halloween party. And I mean, it's a masterpiece. Nothing else to be said. It is a masterpiece. It is one of the best horror films of all time, undoubtedly. Watch it. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? I don't want to say anything about it. Just fucking watch it. Sorry, I'm cursing a lot, but I just feel strongly about these films. Oh, this is not next. Number 8 is The Irishman, a Scorsese film. This is actually a rewatch from maybe last year or 2020. I think it was the year that it came out. I'm not sure which is which, but see, this was a rewatch, and I didn't think much of it on my first viewing. But on this viewing, I mean, I was enamored by the characters, by the way that Scorsese structures the film. There's kind of 3 levels of the narrative being told, and it's just, I mean, the story itself is just it is very prototypical for, I think, what people think of when they think of a Scorsese film. It's a mob movie. De Niro's in it, Pesci's in it, but they actually operate on different levels than they have done in Goodfellas and Casino. in this movie, I think what really stuck out to this movie is the overbearing sense of sadness. This is a sad, sad film. By the end of the movie, you are not going to be happy. You are not going to feel any catharsis at all, which I think in Goodfellas, I mean, that movie's a masterpiece too, but I think that in Goodfellas, you are so wrapped up in the excitement, in the action, in the violence, that it kind of, the point of that movie is obviously not to glorify the mafia, but I think that it, in a sense, it kind of does. Whereas this movie, you do not get any of that glorification by the end of it. It's very clear that this is a shitty way to live. Yeah, I really want to get this on the Criterion Collection, which is why I don't have it yet, because I think I've seen it. No, I misremembering. I don't think I've seen it on DVD, but I really want to get the Criterion of this, but I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. So there's other movies that I wanted to get first. Akira, number 7. This is another classic anime film, cyberpunk film, beautifully animated. I mean, cannot speak high enough praise about the animation, the world, the character designs, the story itself. This is one of those movies that by the end of it, you're going to feel confused. But on future watches, I think it makes more and more sense. And I think it's one of those movies that by the end of it, you kind of just have to have your own interpretation. And I think that's a good thing. And that's unique for anime, I think. I mean, a lot of anime films or anime shows, I should say, are very like, they want to explain every little thing about the world. And I think that's fine. I think that's an equally good way to make your movie if you do it right. But I think that there's value in subjectivity, in open-endedness, and this movie has that. I will say that it is quite violent. There is some sexual assault, so if that kind of rubs you the wrong way, I would not watch it. But it is a wonderful, wonderful cyberpunk film. And I mean, the 4K, I have this on 4K. I'm not even sure if my TV can do 4K. But something about watching this versus when I watched it like on Hulu streaming, this just, I mean, it was even more beautiful than I was anticipating. So get yourself a copy of this if you can. I would recommend watching it with the 4K and watch it. It's phenomenal. Following Akira, the best movie of this year, 2022. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Saw this very early on. And I desperately need to get this on Blu-ray. I can't believe I don't have it yet. I need to rewatch it because I was in the theater floored. I think that part of it was one of the first movies that I had watched post-COVID, not post-COVID, we're still doing COVID, but like post-lockdown, I should say. So it was like one of my first experiences back in the theaters after so many years of not being in the theater. And the grandiose nature of it, I think, was just the perfect theater experience to have coming back. And I mean, aside from that, though, I think that this is an incredibly unique film. Nobody else, aside from these directors, could have made this film, I think. And honestly, I think that no one, aside from the actors that they cast, could have portrayed these characters in this story in a better way. I think that everything, they're firing on all cylinders. This is a perfect movie, in my opinion. I will say, the only thing I will say is that it's a tad bit too long, but I think that the way it makes me feel supersedes that to an extreme degree. This is a beautiful movie, very, very funny, but has a lot of heart, has a lot of emotional impact. And if you haven't seen it, you're fucking up. This is a phenomenal movie. All right, top 5. Before I get into the top 5, I think I want to talk just a second about how PubMeeple works. And that is that, it's an algorithm. So it compares 2 movies, and you just jump back. You just decide which movies you want to do, which movie you prefer. So I think that with this list, like, a lot of these movies could be flipped around on certain days. I might feel differently. But I will say that these top 5, I think these top 5 are in the right range. Like, I don't think these 5 would be any lower than 5. Like, none of these would be lower than 5. And I think the number 1 is perfectly placed. So let's get into it. Starting off with Blood Simple. This is a Coen Brothers film. I believe this is their first film, if I'm not mistaken. And much like Day of the Dead, this was a huge shock that I loved this so much. I mean, I've seen the other Coen Brothers films, a lot of them. And I mean, they're probably my favorite directors and favorite screenwriters, but I mean, for your first movie, for this to be your first movie, that's insane. Like actual genius on display. I think it's a low budget movie, and I think that their influences are very much on the sleeve. But with that being said, like it still manages to be its own thing. It's a neo-noir film, and it just has such a simple story. Truly, it's like 4 characters, but they just make it work. It's just it's phenomenal. I have nothing more to say. Just watch it. All right, number 4, The Lighthouse. Robert Eggers, A24, horror film, slow burn horror film starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, 2 of the greatest actors of our time, in my opinion. And I mean, yeah, this is another movie that just every detail, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's phenomenal. Watch this. With these top 5, I'm just gonna say that a lot because like these movies are just I like can't express in words the way I feel about them because it's just like it really truly they're just when I think about them I just like lose all ability to speak. This is such a good movie. Very dark, both literally and figuratively. It explores how humans, like lose their sense of self. And I think there's a very strong political message in here, is my kind of interpretation of it, with Willem Dafoe kind of wielding all the power, and Robert Pattinson is, his character is subjugated by this older gentleman, and I think that there's a very clear parallel there with the way that capitalism operates and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into all that shit, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely other interpretations you could have of this film, and I think that that's also a beauty of it, is that there's a lot going on here, metaphorically or allegorically speaking, that lends to the story they're telling. So yeah, great movie, wonderfully directed. I think Robert Eggers is one of the best directors currently working. I haven't seen The Northman yet, and I'm a fool. I'm going to watch that ASAP. But yeah, shout out Robert Eggers. The Silence of the Lambs. This is the Criterion version. I was opening the wrong way. I don't know if I need to say more. This is a classic. This is a Best Picture winner, I believe. And Best Director, and Best Screenplay, and Best Actress, and Best Actor. I mean, the Academy's not always right, but when they're right, they're right. And they were definitely right with this one. Yeah, Silence of the Lambs is a tour de force mystery thriller crime movie. I think that it deals with themes of gender a lot, very, very clearly. But even if you don't engage with any of that, it is just a phenomenal mystery on its own. The story is wonderful. It's very dark, not super violent, although I guess I shouldn't say that. There's quite a bit of violence toward the end, but yeah, again, this is one of the movies I could just like ramble about, but it wouldn't be coherent and it wouldn't be enjoyable to watch, so I'm just gonna say, watch it. The Witch, another Robert Eggers film. I definitely prefer The Witch to The Lighthouse, but I will have to admit that I think on a technical level, The Lighthouse, if I'm being more objective, it is a better film. But The Witch, the setting and the way characters speak and the premise, I don't know, just speaks to me more. I think it's definitely like because of religious upbringing, but yeah, just this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I fully expected it to be at the top of this list when I was taking the Pub Meeple thingy. And yeah, it is. I honestly thought it might be number one, but it's not. Much like, I would say, much like The Lighthouse, it explores similar themes of insanity, but through a religious lens. And yeah, I mean, again, I have nothing else to say. It's beautifully shot, wonderfully directed, great acting. I think the biggest barrier for most people is going to be the manner of speaking. It can be a little hard to parse on your first viewing, but I don't think it's actually as complicated as a lot of people seem to make it out to be. And I do want to mention, I saw this movie twice in theaters when it came out, and I don't know if it was the first or second time, but I will always remember when this movie ended and the lights came up, the woman in front of us, middle-aged woman with her husband, presumably, just said out loud to everyone in the theater, which was like 8 people total, but out loud was like, well, that was stupid. And I just think it was so funny. Like, she thought we would just like agree with her. But I was sitting there like, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life. So that's a very funny anecdote that I like to tell. So yeah, The Witch, check it out. The Dad is Hot. All right, here we are at number 1. This was a huge shock to me. I know earlier I said Day of the Dead or From Dusk Till Dawn were the biggest shocks, but I actually think now that I'm realizing it, this might be the biggest surprise. I went into this expecting nothing and came out with probably, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely in the top 3 favorite films of all time. That's The Exorcist 3. Who would have expected this movie to be such a goddamn masterpiece? What the hell was going on when they were making this movie? I do not understand. The first movie's great. Exorcist 1 is phenomenal, of course. We all know that. And then Exorcist 2, The Heretic, is a mess. It's fine, but it's a mess. And then years later, they're like, why don't we just make a sequel and make it one of the best movies to ever be put to film? I can't say anything else. Just watch it. You don't need to have seen the first one. I think it helps because there are returning characters played by different actors, which is kind of confusing. I didn't even realize that the main character was a returning character from the first movie, but I did realize halfway through. But I mean, I don't even know if I should say anything. I'm just gushing internally. Like all these thoughts are running through my head and I cannot verbalize them. This is a amazing film. Please watch this movie if you haven't. If I know you IRL, you may borrow this Blu-ray and watch it and get it back to me, and then you can tell me how right I am. This is an amazing movie. Watch it. All right. Well, that is all of the 5-star films that I watched last year. I feel like I was quite generous. 23 out of 175 is a pretty good ratio. I try not to be stingy with 5-star ratings. I think it's kind of silly when people do. But I also understand that some people have very high criteria for great films, and that's fine too. But I'm trying to be of the mindset to be less stingy with perfect ratings, because I think perfection is unachievable in a literal sense. So there's no reason to expect that of art. So that's my little end of the video rant. Sorry this was so long, but I hope you enjoyed. Hope you got some good recommendations. Hope you saw some good movies this year. If you did, let me know in the comments. I would love to read them. I would love recommendations. I'll throw them on my 800 plus movie watch list on Letterboxd. And yeah, just excited to start a new year. It kind of, it does feel very fresh, like it's a fresh start. There's a whole blank slate ahead for movies to watch, things to enjoy with people that you love. So I'm just rambling, trying to think of a way to end the video. I'm just gonna hit the stop button, and that'll be done. So yeah, have a good day.